Welcome to the Leadership Journal with your hosts, Nick Helgett and Robbie Woodard,
where we cover our journey, struggles, and obstacles that we have overcome, and moments in our careers that have led to growth. Here on Table Talk each week, where we break down various topics and journals of our trials and tribulations.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Leadership Journal with your host, Nick Helgett
And Robbie Woodard.
And our special guest, and hopefully a regular and joining the show full time, Jedediah Stoltz.
Thanks for having me once again.
Today's going to be a fun one because this topic, whether you're tenured in leadership, you're new to leadership, or you're curious about a couple tidbits, this one will be prominent every role you're in. Am I right?
I mean, it's honestly a topic that is applicable in your personal life, in your professional life, and that's detaching from your emotions to be able to be decisive in uncertainty. And what I mean by that is you're gonna come across situations in your life, in your career, doesn't matter, where something is going to be intensely stressful to you, and you have to learn to be able to step back from those emotions and not let them guide your decisions. And because once you've hit that point, your logical brain loses focus, and now it's the fight or flight method.
When you say hit that point, what do you mean when you hit that point?
So let me start by sharing a little bit of a story that happened to me very recently in my at work. Being in a leadership, a salaried position, I have the luxury and the curse of being able to check my email at home. And a peer had sent me some emails while I was not on site that, for lack of a better term, rubbed me the wrong way. With that being said, that put me into a state of mind where I was very angry. I was very upset about the content of what was being said to me and conveyed in that email or email chain and or multiple emails. I had, thankfully, because I was at home and I was in kind of my personal space, I was able to take that 2 seconds to step back and go, wait a minute, I need to stop. I'm being negative. I am letting my ego control my decisions. I need to approach this with a much more positive intent. So I was able to go to work. I'm still frustrated with the situation because it was a very frustrating situation. But, I walk into the room, my peer starts to talk to me, and I, was able to say, I need you to give me a minute. I'm not ready to talk about this yet. Let me put my stuff away and let me get into the right headspace so that I can give you all my attention. Was it still a difficult conversation? Absolutely. Nobody wants to be or feel that they're being attacked. But by taking that time for myself, I was able to detach from those strong emotions and try and be logical, try and be positive, and try and come to a solution for the issue without there being bad blood or saying something that might get me in trouble. Because, oftentimes we approach a situation with emotion, and now we've lost all credibility in that argument. Now it's about how I approach that situation, not the content of what that situation was.
What I love about this is it ties back to our conversation about three worlds. Taking the emotional decisions and taking the logical decisions, and when they mix or they impact one another, if they start bleeding into your personal world or your personal space at work, starts to have a lot of impacts on the other worlds, your leadership world and the real world that we talked about, where it becomes a lot harder to have that gap or that space that you need personally to lead successfully, right?
Yep. And where where I'm employed at, we have a process called the challenge process. And I know, Jed, you and I both have kind of run into this a few different times, and where somebody is challenging either direction we're giving or a process that we're trying to implement or what have you, and they come at it with raw emotion based on their experience, their tenure, wherever their place of understanding is coming from, and they approach it with raw emotion. And now we're having a disciplinary conversation, or a seek to understand conversation, or a coaching conversation, for lack of a better term in my brain right now.
An accountability conversation.
An accountability conversation because of how it was approached, and now their point is long gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I can share. Unfortunately, I can't share with any detail, but
yeah,
I'll be the first person to say that this is a huge growth opportunity for me. I'll just be honest with everybody here,
myself included.
It's not my strongest.
My third on that.
It's not my strongest trait, and I think your point about the way that something is addressed or challenged is as important as what you're challenging, or how what point you're trying to get across, as anything else, because I have definitely experienced people challenging decisions that have been made in my department in a very emotional, negative way, which I have not responded well to, right? And that led to me following up with that individual's direct supervisor in an equally emotionally charged and negative way. And at the end of the day, in this particular situation that I have in my mind, there was no proper resolution. I was just as wrong as the person who got me fired up.
Yep. And
the person that I went to didn't listen to me any more than I listened to the person who had upset me in that moment. And it was not a healthy situation. And that was a huge learning opportunity for me about how I respond in these kinds of situations, and how I need to react differently if I'm going to be effective as a leader to help hold other people accountable. I have to hold myself accountable first.
I mean, humans have this overwhelming need to be heard, and that emotion surrounding that need is intense at times.
I could be incredibly sarcastic and say, really, we do, but everyone has that exact feeling of, I don't feel heard right now. I'm feeling attacked. I'm feeling roped along. I'm feeling like missed, neglected, whatever word you want to try to use to convey that I am not present in however you're deciding to react to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that accountability moment on both people to realize what is actually happening in this instance. Why am I charged one way or the other? And how do I either get out of that mindset, fix that mindset, or correct the charge to make it more beneficial? I think that's the key that we need to really uncover.
Can I share a additional learning from my example?
Of course.
After the fact, right, as I began to calm down and see the situation that had unfolded with a little more clarity, because I wasn't emotionally charged any longer, I started to realize that the disconnect was partly a disconnect in communication. And what I didn't understand about the way that this individual had approached me at the time is that they really were passionate about this company being successful, this place that we work. And they really were passionate about doing the right thing. And they didn't feel that what was going on was right for in the moment, or was the right precedent, I suppose, to set. And because they were so passionate about the success for the company, they responded in a very emotionally charged way. They felt, I think, threatened by the long-term future of this company was threatened by that kind of decision making. And it came out, as one might say, a little sideways.
Yep.
but it was a result of them wanting the right thing for the company. And my reaction, the way I took it, was the same reaction. I wanted the right thing for the company. And I should say, this wasn't my decision that was made. I was just there at the time, but I felt that it was the right thing. And I wanted what was best for the company. And so when that challenge was issued in such an emotionally charged way, it threatened my view of what was best for the company. And I became upset. And so that got me going. And that's when I made my challenge to this other individual in an emotionally charged way, who also felt that they had their own view of what was good for the company. But at the end of the day, we all wanted the same basic thing. And that's partly what got us in trouble.
Yeah. And that got lost.
We weren't aligned on how to get that.
Yep.
And we didn't communicate well on why we were doing what we were doing. But we all wanted the same thing, which was success. And we were all very passionate about getting that success.
And I think passion in of itself is incredibly important for finding the moments that everyone is most engaged or most motivated or most willing to do something in the correct way for success. But it's not letting the emotional side of that completely drive everything you do. Because there can be times where leading through emotions are absolutely perfect, and then there's times where leaving the emotion out is the best form of action, or best course of action. But I am no expert in this myself. I'm sure we could talk to psychologists, sociologists, or anyone that specializes in that side of the field. But it's finding that balance is, I think, the crucial part here.
And it really goes down to basics, just identifying your body language, identifying that stress ball in the pit of your stomach, and recognizing that it's there, and I need to take a second to not push your emotions down, because because burying your emotions is really a bad thing, but being like, okay, I can set this over here and I can come back to it later, and I can deal with this on a personal level, when this is done. But right now, I recognize that I'm upset, and I need to detach. I need to take a step back. And because basically what you're doing, by doing that, you improve your clarity, you enhance your ability to problem solve, because you're seeing it from a higher level. You're not in the weeds fighting the fight. You're able to step back and go and kind of direct yourself and others more productively, more positively. And then you're going to have, in the end of it, you're going to have better team dynamics. You're going to communicate better. So breaking it down to those basic fundamentals of just recognizing tales of your body language and feeling in yourself is the first step to detaching from that for a few minutes, to be able to make that decision and have that conversation.
Well, and think of how many people, this is a question for our listeners, and count how many people are on your team, including yourself, just the people you deal with on a daily basis in the real world. How many different personalities, how many different approaches, or how much everyone is attached in certain passions or certain motivations, and having to juggle that on the leader level with your teams is a very hard skill to get your feet wet in.
Yep.
But once you can have that relationship with each individual person, and this might push them over the board, how do I slowly walk them down that path to mitigate the charged reaction? But at the same time, how do I build that? How do I flex that muscle? How do I build that rapport with somebody to know that I can at times go full bore into an emotionally charged conversation to get the best results and improve my relationship with them? And at the same time, how do I learn from that and remember?
And Simon, I saw a bit from Simon Sinek about this kind of thing, and it's like, and he was talking about venting and complaining, about situations or people or whatever, and that, it is okay to vent. But if I was going to go into your office and be like, look, I need 5 minutes to vent, and I set the stage I'm going to close the door. I need to get this out so I can better focus on what I need to focus on. And now you're prepared for me to unload. And
Absolutely.
you know it's not about you.
Absolutely.
And so you're setting the stage, you're creating a space to be able to do that. And that's healthy.
Absolutely. And I've given that same message to people on my team. You're working in the environment in which we work with a lot of people who are passionate about the success of our business. It's not an uncommon thing where we run into situations where people are very upset or feel very strongly about things, about the way the company is going. And there's a lot of factors for that, right? But at the end of the day, it's come out sideways more than a few times with people on my crew, on my team, or people who are on my team just for the day, right? On an overtime shift or something along those lines. People who don't report to me, but are on my team in a support capacity, something along those lines. And it's come out sideways a few times, and usually that's something that we can talk through and come to a better understanding. Sometimes it hasn't been, and we've had to have different conversations with those team members. But I have told multiple people who have come to vent to me and then apologize immediately after. I'm so sorry for saying those things or for being upset. I'm not upset with you. I just needed to say that.
Yeah.
The same thing. If you come to my office and say, can I have a few minutes? I just need to get this off my chest. You can say almost anything to me that you want to say. And there's a 90% chance it's not going to faze me at all.
Yeah.
Because I understand that this isn't an attack. This isn't that you're not doing this in a negative way or for negative reason, but you have these feelings, these emotions built up, and you need to bring it out. You need to talk to somebody and tell somebody about it. And you've chosen me to be that person.
And now you're able to give that clarity.
Exactly. And then if there's a why that somebody doesn't understand, I can provide that why for them. If there's, honestly, oftentimes they have questions I didn't know the answer to, and I need to find clarification. And sometimes that's resulted in a course correction.
Yep.
And they're coming up to vent to me, actually solved a problem we didn't even know was going to happen yet because they saw it differently than I did.
Yep.
And
forced you to think differently.
Absolutely. Forced us to think differently. And I 100% support that idea. If you need to vent, just tell me you need to vent. When you're in that context, you can say almost anything and it will likely be a non-issue.
Yep.
Well, and
Go ahead,
sorry,
Robbie.
Nick.
No, you're good.
I'm gonna call myself out because I know, right? But there was a time where courage was probably very hard in a certain circumstance, and it was an interaction that you and I had, Jed.
Okay.
Where at work I came in and I didn't even know that I was very direct. I came in hot, and
I remember.
And
this.
I had said a couple.
I think
things.
I remember this too.
I had said a couple things, not even emotionally charged, just looking at everything and being super blunt, super direct. When I went to go walk out of the room, you actually stopped me and said, "Hey, can we talk real quick?" And you recapped a couple things that I had done in the interaction, in the instance, and helped me realize that I was way too charged in one direction, and how I made you feel. And that actually allowed me to look at it a different way and to realize that there is times being too emotionally detached can be very bad in certain circumstances.
Sure.
It's those situations you'll always remember.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Like, it was potentially a kind of a negative situation that was turned positive just by a little bit of clarity and a little bit of, oh crap, I didn't realize I came across this way, or I didn't, you learn something out of that, and that's going to stick with you for probably forever, as long as you can remember,
And there's something to be said for having a team of people around you that you can give that kind of feedback to. Mm-hmm. And now we're all sitting here on a podcast together,
right?
Because we can give that kind of feedback to each other, even if we're a little emotionally charged in the moment. But take it constructively and have those conversations, because we all want the best thing for each other and for the business at the end of the day.
Yep.
And it's that ability to pause, collect yourself, and to say, okay, how can I take that step to bring everything back down, to discharge the situation, and to re-level the playing field.
Yeah. And then, I'll take it a step further is recognizing, spending a little time with yourself so that you can recognize those situations that do cause you stress. Mm-hmm. And that way you can come better prepared, knowing if you know you're going to be walking into a situation that you're uncomfortable with. It's either a difficult conversation, or maybe you don't like speaking to a large group of people. Ding, ding, ding. There's me. Giving yourself an opportunity to be human, away from the situation, recognizing those. I hate using this word, but I'm going to use it because I think it works in this. What triggers your senses, your heightened senses. Wow. Okay. Words are hard.
You want to take another go at that?
Yeah. Senses. And just preparing yourself, discussing those signs with either, a good peer that you can close that door and say, look, I got this coming up. I want to run through this with you because I'm a little nervous, or, whatever the situation is. And let me bounce a couple ideas off you, get some feedback, and then get myself into that headspace that I need to be in to be successful. And so it's really important to spend that time with yourself to recognize what can cause you those things. For like me, public speaking to big groups of people that are at higher levels than me, or maybe it's a client that you're trying to work with and continue to do business with. So you want to put your best foot forward, and you don't want to screw up. So you're putting undue pressure on yourself, unneeded pressure on yourself, and causing yourself to have what I like to call situational paralysis, where you're prepared, or you think you're prepared, and then the situation comes, and all of a sudden no words come out. Your mouth is moving, and nothing's happening. So recognizing those signs for yourself, understanding the situations that can put you in that mindset is critical to trying to avoid that situational paralysis.
Well, and I'm sure we've all experienced this. We get started for the day, everything's going really well, and then there's just that moment where everything starts to go wrong, or everything starts to have
the snowball effect.
Have that snowball effect, or one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And then
that never happens in retail.
never happens at all. Even in a manufacturing environment or a warehousing environment, any kind of environment where you have a real life situation going on and a complex work environment, you've got to balance priorities. You got to balance tasks, and being able to breathe in them sometimes becomes, you can't do it.
And I think when I really started to study this years ago, and I think why it resonated so much is because I didn't have that experience, but I had a higher respect level, and that's when I started reading Extreme Ownership. Jocko Willink is putting things, talking about these intensely stressful situations where somebody is literally shooting a gun at you, and being able to detach from that fear that, this could be my last 3 minutes of life, to be able to make decisive decisions to keep yourself and your teammates safe and alive. And so having that, like, okay, I don't have to deal with that. I'm not in the military. This is, moving boxes, or this is a distribution environment, or what have you. Like, okay, I can do this. This same principle that these people use to stay alive can apply here in my, distribution job. And I can now, okay, this isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's a certain amount of context to be considered, and sometimes we get so wrapped up in what we're doing that it does feel like the end of the world. Oh, this machine is down and it costs you $10,000 an hour not to run it, and whatever it may be, right? And all of a sudden you're panicking, right? I don't want to be the one responsible for costing the company $20, $30, $40,000 or more if we can't solve this problem. And I'm the person in the building right now who's responsible for solving this problem. What am I supposed to do? This is something I've never experienced before. It's not easy to do in the moment, but practicing, stepping back and looking at the whole problem, and realizing that it's going to take time to work through, and that's okay. At the end of the day, getting some results is better than no results.
And remembering that you're not the smartest, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room.
No. A lesson, I wouldn't say this is necessarily only a leadership lesson, but something I learned a long time ago. And if you're listening to this, Brandy, I respect you for telling me this, and I still remember it to this day. I worked when I was in high school in a health food store in a small town. The owner's name was Brandy, and she had to go out for a little bit to do a business related thing. I can't remember what it was. And she left the store in my hands, and I didn't know a whole lot about it. I only worked there a short time and in a very limited capacity. And I asked, what do I do if somebody has questions I don't know the answers to? Because I don't know these things the way that you guys do. And she told me, you don't have to know all the answers, but you should know where to find them, and pointed me to a large binder that had a significant amount of information about these various supplements, things like that, what they're good for, what they're useful for, and all kinds of cross-referencing. It was an amazing piece of material that she pointed me to, and that lesson has stuck with me for the rest of my life. I don't have to have all the answers. In fact, I'm not going to, because I am not the smartest person in the room, and I'm largely of the opinion that if you are the smartest person in the room, you've made a mistake and you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
But I do need to know where I can get the answers. Who do I go to get this answer? Where can I locate it? Maybe on a SharePoint or in a file or even in a binder somewhere on a dusty shelf. And I'll admit, those are all things that I have resorted to in my current role, that have come through for me and helped me find solutions. And maybe not solutions that where I was able to put into effect immediately. Sometimes it was still a solution for days or weeks out, if you're looking for materials, for example, that nobody can provide. But that has been probably one of the best pieces of advice in my entire career, whether I was in a leadership position or not, is that I don't have to know the answer. I just need to know where to find it.
It took me a while, and I know we're going on a tangent away from emotional decision making right now, but I appreciate this. It took a while for me to get to that exact same thought process. At my first employer, I wanted to know everything. I wanted to be able to answer everybody's questions. I wanted to be the knowledgeable person in the room. Mm-hmm. And that helped me out be successful in certain manners, in certain ways, and it helped me move up the ladder and to move on to different things. But then when a peer of mine told me, hey, you don't need to know everything. You need to know how to ask the right questions to know what they're asking, to then be able to network to the next person, to loop them back. I never wanted to be the person that said, I don't know. I wanted to be able to answer everyone's questions, and that added stress. That added a lot of anxiety to me training, teaching, developing other people. And then when I was able to actually accept what that person said to me, my ceiling became a lot higher. My ability to improve became a lot higher, because it no longer was on me to have the answers as a leader. It helped me develop and train other people to help me answer those questions, to test their knowledge, to see if I could help them improve, but also to help me grow as well. And I think when we're super focused as a leader on being successful, we get so caught up in having all the answers that you need to pause for a second and ask, why do I need to know everything? Why can't I just accept that I'm not going to know everything? But I need to know how to build a dynamic with my team to answer those questions, or my peers, or my support network, or even my boss to admit that I don't know that. How can I learn that, or how can I help build that capability in myself?
Yeah. And that it's funny because that leads us into the next kind of thing as understanding techniques to get you there. And I'm glad that you said pause, because one of those rules of thumb is the 10-second rule, pausing before reacting.
Wait, you want me to not just react with how I initially want to react? You think I should wait?
I mean, it's generally a good idea.
Why? I mean,
because that's you detaching from that initial knee-jerk reaction of, how dare you,
Well, I'm just going to be honest. For me, right, that 10 seconds helps an awful lot in just processing the information that I've been given.
Yeah.
Right? Taking that 10 seconds to maybe not say anything, but just think, gives me the opportunity to, we've said this a few times in the podcast, say a machine is down and it's an important machine that's going to cost a considerable amount of money if we can't get back up and running. And my knee-jerk reaction might be do anything to get it going, or get all these people down here, or whatever, right? The case might be. I'm going to freak out because I need to get this back up. And because it really matters, taking that 10 seconds to just think, okay, this machine is down. I don't know why it's down. I don't know what's been done. I really don't have any information here. I should start asking questions. And then you can get to the root of what the problem really is and start gathering the information that you need to make an effective and informed decision. And it's for me, that's what it is, right? Just it's processing the whole picture, getting the opportunity to say, okay, this is what just hit me with like a ton of bricks. Now what? And not having to go straight into, okay, I'm going to fix it.
Yeah.
And being an effective leader is really about how do you problem solve various situations, various things that are occurring in your day. And you're going to get hit with a lot of things at one time. You're going to not know how to juggle, how to prioritize, how to balance stuff out. And if you're just going by the seat of your pants the whole day, you're either not going to have any trousers when you're done because you're going to be ran out of them.
That's my favorite way to work.
Or you're going to be able to sit comfortably and pause, and your back's not going to hurt, your legs aren't going to be tired, your feet aren't going to be sore, because you've allowed your moment, that yourself that moment to, oh, what if I looked at it a different perspective?
Mm-hmm. Or like early in my time at my current role, we had a major quality event, and everybody in the facility was looking at me for direction and an answer. And I had zero capacity to give that. I didn't have very much experience. And at the time I was like, I can't do this. That was my initial knee-jerk thought. But then I remembered I have a team of people that work with me that are fully capable of helping. And so I started to do what I knew I could do, and that was take the stuff off my plate and delegate those different pieces to different people, so that, because I can't handle everything at once. No matter how much humans think that they can multitask, it's pretty much impossible. You can be good at prioritizing and executing, but you truly can't multitask. So understanding that, okay, person A, okay, you're going to handle this portion of it, well, person B is taking care of this piece of the puzzle, and now this is off my plate, and I can focus on this, and we can be successful, and we can come to a group solution. And so it's so important to step back and go, okay, I don't have to know everything.
I have a thought. It popped in my head. I need to share it so I don't lose it.
Do it.
But when we talk about multitasking, we talk about different things happening at one time in your day. Just a simple exercise, if you're listening, or even for us to try to do at some point, try sending somebody an email, a text message, or some kind of blurb while someone is talking to you. Do you think it's possible to listen to what they're saying and be able to write an email at the same time and not type what that person is saying to you or what you want to respond back to that person? You think it's possible?
I can tell you firsthand, it's not. If I had $1 for every time I've done exactly that, someone comes walking in the office and asks me questions, I'm trying to send off a very important email. So I'll just keep typing while they're talking to me, and before I know it, I'm typing the thoughts in my head about what they're saying to me, and nothing at all about what that email was supposed to be about.
I mean, I've experienced that.
Been there.
And when someone tells me I can multitask, I just go to that thought of, no, you can't. The human brain is not capable of doing more than one thing at a time, because it wants to focus on not the loudest thing, but the most prompt thing in front of you. What I got really good at with my team was that if I was in the middle of something and they had something they needed to talk about, I'd put up 1 or 2 fingers just as a sign for I need a moment, or hang on, so I could finish what I was doing, so that now my attention can go to that person.
Yeah.
It's over time, that's a muscle I had to remember to do, because I thought I could do it at one point. No, I got proven wrong by my own brain. Sorry. That's my thought on multitasking.
Yeah. So let me pose a question. There's an idea of what's called the 70% rule, and that's making decisions with partial information. I've always felt that that's much easier to do when you have a robust level of experience in the field.
Sure.
Right?
You have a background in whatever it is that you're making that decision in.
But I found that trying to make those 70% decisions when you don't have a robust background, because you're new to the facility, or you're new to manufacturing, whatever the case may be, you still got to make decisions, because you're the leader. People are looking to you for those decisions. And I found that sourcing a couple, like everybody has those couple people on their team that they're your trusted advisors, and a quick like, hey, here's the situation, what do you think? Hey, here's the situation, what do you think? And now I've got enough of a baseline to start making the decision. Okay, let's roll with this, and now I can speak to it. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it might be the wrong decision, but now I can speak to it and at least say, with the information that was in front of me, this is why I made this decision.
And that goes back to the failing safely, building the pen through experience, and not having so many guardrails put up around you that you feel claustrophobic and unable to make a decision. That almost feels like you're limiting your capability to make a correct decision.
Yeah. And looping back a little bit, I think, to some of what we mentioned earlier, I've worked in very few industries in my career where, I don't want to say your decisions matter, but where your decisions are probably life and death.
Right.
We've talked about manufacturing, we've talked about retail, and there are times where your decisions may be life and death, say with a lockout, tagout kind of situation, or a safety system override because of a malfunction, whatever the case may be, right? You may end up making those decisions, but oftentimes I find the decisions we stress out about the most are the decisions that are probably of the least consequence.
Why?
Which is to say that, to use my example earlier, if this machine is down and it costs $10,000 an hour to keep it down, it's money. And money is important to a business. Don't get me wrong, it absolutely is. But at the end of the day, it's money.
Well,
right.
Yeah, and that's part of doing your cost benefit analysis on your shift, right? And
right. But what I mean to say is that, that machine being down a little bit longer because you needed to gather the information to make that right decision.
Right.
Or perhaps your decision only got you partway there, right? I think I used the phrase earlier, some production is better than no production. And that was the best that you could do with the information you had, was get it to a point where you could do something, but maybe not back up where it needed to be. And rather than saying, I didn't do the right thing because I didn't have the information at the time, or stressing out about getting all the way up where it needed to be, understand that your decision, yes, will have a financial impact, but in this example of the machine not being running, right? If you can get it going a little bit and nobody's hurt or killed, then I consider that a success. Is it a learning opportunity so that you can do better in the future? Absolutely, because our goal should be to do the best that we can. But sometimes the best that you can, when you're new to an industry or you don't have all the information, it's not going to be the best that maybe somebody else could do, and that's okay too. You shouldn't put the pressure on yourself to be perfect every single time and end up in like a task paralysis or decision paralysis state where, I'm not going to do anything unless it's absolutely perfect, because that's just not the reality that we live in. Something is better than nothing. And at the end of the day, right, whether you're making lumber or car parts or you work in a retail environment stocking shelves, who is going to be hurt by your decision? And the answer, and oftentimes, is probably nobody. No. And I found that when it is somebody that could be hurt by your decisions, those decisions are easier because you stop and you have to think. When you're talking about like a lockout tagout situation, something where somebody may be put in harm's way, those are the decisions that we always take longer on purpose, because we don't want that to happen. And it's easier to justify, I don't like using that word, but it's easier to speak to why that decision took so long, or why you made a decision that maybe cost production because you were protecting your team from potential injury or fatality, which is also protecting the company. But yeah, my experience has been that the decisions I stress out about the most are not the most consequential decisions I have to make. They're often the ones where I'm concerned about production or uptime or something along those lines, rather than, I'll just be honest, something that really matters in the long term.
Well, and I think it goes back to when we have the workforce that has the experience or the tenure, the knowledge. They know what this machine is capable of and how to go in and fix it. But as stuff evolves over time, they're not always in tune. Sometimes with remembering a little bit of a change here, a little bit of change there, they just kind of go for it how they're used to doing it. And we've seen some changes, some growth, some adaptation, and their initial reaction is logically sound, but then also it's ego-centered. I've already done this. I'm going to go do it this way. They're leaning in on an emotional side of their reaction. And then it's, how as a leader can we remind them with KPI mindsets, KPI focuses, or even like safety, how do we prevent that from becoming a life or death situation if it's involving lockout tagout, if it's involving a machine that could turn on at some instance, or something could fall on somebody that they're not even looking behind them, or they're in a mobile equipment drive path and they're just focused on right here and right now, and they don't let someone know that could be driving down a very intersection, that they're even there. They're in a blind spot. How do we help lead that and help focus the decision making around that so that it's more logically sound and balanced?
Some of it comes down to trusting your instincts. We had another facility had a situation happen where the placement of a baler was in it just wasn't in a good spot. It was right in a drive aisle. And a person was in that, like, had the door open, was in that baler, and with where the door swings out, they're behind it, and the direction of travel for the truck, they can't see the person in there. And if they weren't paying attention, they could have hit that door and squished that person. So in that situation, I might not know anything about that facility, but I know, trusting my instincts, we have to stop. We have to put guarding up. We have to put some sort of a control there to keep someone out, to keep that from happening. So trusting your instincts. I may not know everything about the baler, but I know that something needs to happen here. And, taking some input from your trusted advisors and making a decision based on the facts that are in front of you, and trusting your instincts and going with it, will keep you out of that, oh my gosh, something bad could happen, I can't move.
Mm-hmm. That decision paralysis is something that's really hard to overcome in some instances, but it's knowledge, experience, and motivation help you kind of overcome that and know how to react and logically move through things and be able to help keep everything attached to lead in the right direction.
And part of the way you get there is continuous learning. Like, I hear this across multiple industries, but it reigns true. The more you can be open and learn about a situation and have the humility to say, I don't know everything, and have that learning mindset, you're going to be more prepared every time you come across some of these stressful situations. And it's much easier for you to not react on emotion. Because the more you know, but it is true. It doesn't mean you're the smartest person in the room, but it means you take something away from every situation you've been in and you've learned from it. You know, maybe you did make the wrong decision and it doesn't end in a life or death situation, but I know I should have done this time, you know, to have a better outcome. And now you have that tool to apply later.
And the saying will always be true. If you learned nothing new today, what did you accomplish?
Probably not much.
If you ever become in an instance where you feel like you know everything, you really don't. You need to check yourself, because if you are in a moment where you know everything, it's either time to do something different or to self-evaluate and see if you really do know it enough to be able to do the next thing, or to be able to replicate results, or be able to say that I did that, I could do it again.
Well, and when it's fresh, seeking feedback.
Yep.
Like, hey, we just handled this. Is there anything I could have done differently to, you know, have a better outcome or a quicker outcome, or, you know, whatever the situation is, but like constantly asking for feedback and trying to apply that feedback.
Yeah. To have that humility to say, I know I'm not perfect. I know I probably made some mistakes in this decision-making process, but if you can tell me what you saw that I can improve on, then I will put that into action and try to do better in the future. I would say, you know, Robbie, earlier you mentioned a challenge to the listeners, or a question to the listeners. And I think for anyone who's listening, who's new to leadership, or maybe not necessarily in a position where you're a leader by title, but maybe a peer leader, or sort of de facto leader, or just interested in getting into a leadership role or becoming that peer leader, you know, some of the stuff we've talked about is pretty easy to practice wherever you are right now. Every day, I think most of us end up being faced with decisions, whether we're the leader or not, and there's not always somebody who's there to guide us, and or are faced with situations that you don't like, or that you don't agree with from your leadership. And so if getting into leadership is something that you want to do, practicing that emotional detachment is something you can do right now. You know, it's when your peers have opinions about your job that you don't agree with, learning to process that emotion in a healthy way so that you can have healthy conversations with your peers goes a long way. That's the same basic skill that we're talking about, learning to detach from a situation so that you can engage in it more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Effectively?
Productively.
Okay.
Yeah, effectively is good. Productively, I think, is the one I was looking for. When you get bad feedback, maybe, or I shouldn't say bad feedback, when you get negative feedback from a supervisor or a peer or a customer, learning to detach from that situation and look at that feedback and evaluate it on its face for truth and applying it if necessary. I think those are good skills that you can use to build that emotional attachment, practicing taking that 10 seconds, thinking all the way through the situation, and getting to a point where you can engage in a conversation with others without steering it in an unhealthy or negative way. Those are things that any of us, I think, can practice in our jobs, no matter what level of leadership you're at, or whether you're an aspiring leader or anything like that. I think everybody can practice that.
And I think it's, if you can find a way to have a win in every circumstance, every situation, and then have something that didn't go well and writing them down. Because I got really good at this at one point, of writing everything down, and I stopped doing it. But if you have a journal of how you had wins for the day or how you could have done better, it helps you look at your growth or your path forward and be able to say, hey, I've done this before. Here's what I learned. Here's what could have been better. And then here's how I kind of overcame that. And then it just builds more muscle memory, more flex points for you to help the next person who might come into the same circumstance. And then you can point them in the right direction, not do it for them, but be that voice of reason that somebody else was for you in that instance. And I think that's the ultimate key to some of this is we're human. We're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna have moments. We've always had somebody that taught us or showed us or mentored us the correct way, or not the correct way, but a better way to do something, to look at something, to have a perspective that we weren't in tune with. And if we can have that journal that shows where we were and then where we are now, that's a lot more effective for the next person.
You know, I just thought of something like a good way to practice this, a good technique I feel like that you could put into play at home is like next time you say step on something hard and hurt your foot or stub your toe or something like that, force yourself to stop and go over the steps that just happened that led you to that pain. And it forces you to not focus on the pain and be angry about it, but okay, my kid left Legos on the floor. You know, now I'm going to start going through a process to make sure that when my kid is done playing with their toys, that they pick them up, and like go through it and come up with solutions to avoid that situation in the future for your own personal toe safety or whatever it is.
Can I ask you, did you step on something today or kick something?
No, but I stubbed my toe a lot on my fireplace mantle.
Maybe you would be aware that the mantle's there.
It just popped in my head of like, man, if I could stop myself and think through like, was I avoiding something else on the floor that I need to pick up? Like, there's a cat toy on the floor or something that I stepped over and then banged my toe. Like, if I would have stopped and took 5 seconds to pick that thing up, I wouldn't have stubbed my toe. I think it's kind of a unique way to look at it and put that into practice just in your personal day-to-day at home.
I want to add one thing to what you were saying, Robbie, about keeping sort of a journal, writing down what your wins are, what your opportunities may be, so that you can learn from them or potentially pass that on to somebody else. The only other thing I want to add to that is know yourself if you're going to do that. Some people, and I've found myself in this position before, will tend to focus on only the negative things. And if you're the kind of person who's going to do that, if you write down your opportunities and your wins, will write down 80% opportunities, but you don't really notice your own wins, have an accountability partner. Have somebody who can be there, who knows what your strengths and weaknesses are, and that you trust to have those kinds of conversations. It could be your leader, it could be a peer, it could be anybody who's familiar with what it is that you're trying to do in your journey, and have them go through these things with you and help hold you accountable to being honest with yourself about what's happening. Because we all have opportunities, right? We all make mistakes. Dare I say it, we all fail on a regular basis, but we all win on a regular basis too. And I just don't want anybody to get bogged down thinking, well, I fail all the time. Here's what I messed up today. Here's what I messed up yesterday. Look at this big book I have written down of things that document all my mess ups. Yep. And not give yourself the grace of understanding all the things that you did right, all the things that you won at, all the things that you went above and beyond for and got excellent results. We all want excellent results to be our norm, but just because they're our norm doesn't mean that we don't get credit for achieving them. Yeah. And so, you all know yourselves better than anybody else. And if you're the kind of person, if that resonates with you, that you're the kind of person who's going to be hard on yourself but never give yourself credit, and you're interested in doing something like that, then I would encourage you to have a trusted partner who can point out to you what they see. You say that was a failure, but here's why I think that was a win.
Because you never want to get stuck in that feedback loop of negative.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a hard thing to get yourself out of, especially on your own.
And what I really think everyone should be encouraged to do is to take some of these key points we've talked about, being able to be emotionally detached, being able to be logically reasoned, be able to find key points, be able to look at team dynamics, look at your personal bubble and how you react and like self-reflect actively throughout your day. But if you have anything that you want to add into this discussion or anything you want to kind of bring back to us, let us know. Really drive home some things that resonated with you so that we can, if we need to, which I think we're going to, come back to this conversation and add in some more points, because we could talk for hours about this. I just know we can. So just really want to encourage everybody to give us some old situations that you've been involved in, some things that you've seen or you've heard or you've been involved in that this would help in the future, or even if it's a situation you're looking back on that was important and you're realizing now that I can do that again. Let us know.
Awesome.
Well, thank you guys for letting me be a part of this episode.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming in today, Jed.
We will see you next time on the Leadership Journal.
Enjoy your listening journey, everybody. Catch you next time.
Thank you.